The Lord has risen again. Not that one though. She did release Melodrama, which some could argue is pop Bible, so she's a religious figure to some. Hey, I'm Caleb. I make movies and music, and I like to talk about them sometimes. And today we are finally talking about the fourth studio album from Lorde titled Virgin. I have been a huge Lorde fan. Ever since middle school, I really connected with Pure Heroin, specifically the song 400 Lux. It's like one of, if not the most perfect song ever written, I think. This album cycle started very suddenly, and it felt very in the moment, and that was very much by design. She talked a lot about how she wanted this album to feel very spontaneous and alive. It's this big period of rebirth from her, and thankfully she landed it, in my opinion. I think this is one of the most intricate, interesting, and fresh sounding albums to come out of the 2025 album cycle. It is so sonically cohesive and electric, and it just sounds like nothing I've ever heard before, while also sounding exactly like a Lorde record. A lot of people were worried that this was going to be Melodrama 2, worried or excited depending on how you feel. I didn't really want another Melodrama. I didn't want her to try and re-engineer Lightning in a Bottle, and thankfully she didn't. I think Virgin might, in my opinion, be her best album to date, at least based off initial listens. Obviously there's recency bias, but listening to this album, she really paints intricate and vulnerable picture of who she is right now. If you didn't know, she's kind of been in a little bit of hot water recently publicly because of the Rolling Stone article, and she's just been saying these really, she's been Lorde. If you're a fan of Lorde, you know she's a little bit strange. And my mother's child, I love you too. This is her most raw and vulnerable album to date, I think. Virgin is such a cohesive piece of work, and you can really feel how much of herself she's put into it. And I hate having to wait 4 years for her albums, but she always packages them together in such a thoughtful way, and every single part of this album feels purposeful and intentional and succinct. So now I'm going to break down the album track by track and just tell you my thoughts about it and the overall story that I think that she's trying to tell. Starting off with Hammer, I'm going to be honest, I actually didn't really get Hammer when it initially came out.
What?
No, all right. I know that sounds bad.
I felt like all the pieces didn't really mesh together until I heard it in the context of the album, with What Was That coming immediately after. I think Hammer sets up a lot of the themes throughout the album, her talking about her exploration with gender, with the sometimes I'm a woman, sometimes I'm a man lyric. She talks a lot about ovulation. She's freaked out on this album. And you know what? I'm freaked out in real life, so I was clapping and cheering personally. Lock me up. I think as an album opener, it really sets the tone for the sonic journey you're gonna go. Like, the sonic soundscape that they establish within this first song is not really broken throughout the entire album. Like, there's not really a song that feels out of place to me. She says that she really wanted to use these like instruments that they're clearly electronic, but they sound like they could be a real instrument. And she described this on the Zane Lowe interview as the microplastics are already in the bloodstream, which I think is just such a cool way to describe like the sound that you're using. But yeah, Hammer for me, I think it's a great opener track. Hearing it with the album and giving it some time, I think it's honestly a really good vibe check at the door. Moving into What Was That? What Was That is kind of, to me, the gag of the century. I think What Was That is probably her best lead single. It immediately feels like the polar opposite of Solar Power. It gave me the same feeling of listening to Look What You Made Me Do when that first came out. It's just like a, this is the Lorde I'm here for, and she's mad as hell. I think What Was That is so fun, and it's upbeat, and it has those strange distorted synths that she's super popular for. It almost feels a little bit like Hard Feelings / Loveless. She's like returning to that sonic soundscape just a little bit, almost reminiscing on it. This entire album is about deconstructing herself and taking all these walls that she's put up and finding out who is at the center of that. Who is she at her core? When you peel back all of the layers, when you peel back the flesh, like what is left? And I think What Was That is the first toe dip into being like, what have I become? Like, I used to be so in love with this person, and equating a relationship to a cigarette addiction, I think it makes perfect sense. It's a very clear visual of how she's feeling about this. And I think, like I said, I think it's her best single. The music video, I think it's, as a film major, I don't love how it looks, but I really like the vibe it gives, if that makes sense. She wanted it to feel very spontaneous, and you know what it was. Moving on to Shapeshifter. Shapeshifter gave me like full body chills when I first listened to it. I think the singles really didn't paint a great idea of what this album was about, and I don't think there's any singles that you could have picked because the album is so vast in its subject and sound. And I think the singles she picked were really good, but I think there's no single that you could have given me to prepare me for this album sonically. And I think Shapeshifter is such a beautiful song with the strings in the background that hit in the middle of the chorus right after she says, I just wanna fall. I have to sit with it a little bit longer to really fully digest like what the song is about, but off of first impressions, to me, it feels like is almost a response to What Was That in my reading of it, where here she is talking about wanting to fall in love again, but not wanting any of the low, and shape-shifting to try and avoid that pain, to try and say, no, I actually never meant this. This was nothing to me. We were just friends. And it really hits in that like final bridge and the outro. So lush and just envelops you, and it shimmers out. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful track 3. Shapeshifter honestly has like very similar drums to What Was That. And I've noticed that throughout a lot of the songs, they have a lot of the same sounds used. She said that's intentional, that they wanted to use a lot of similar sounds throughout the album. It's one of her best produced songs, and that kind of goes for the whole album. The soundscape her and Jim Stack create together on this entire album is so lush and full and at times jarring, and I think that's exactly what I wanted from this album. Moving on to Man of the Year. I loved Man of the Year. Man of the Year was the second single off the album, and on first listen, I was obsessed. I love that outro with the crescendos. This was Lorde's first time exploring her gender identity and playing with masculinity and femininity. And the music video has this like very iconic visual of her duct taping her chest, and so does the single cover. And for me, as somebody who's never really questioned their gender, I relate to this song a lot, just about any form of self-discovery and figuring out who you are. It's about finding a revelation that you didn't expect to happen, and the chaos and also the joy of that. And I think it's just a super, super impactful song to me. The line, "You met me at a really strange time in my life," I think it's so simple, and I'm sure it's been said a million times, but I think the way that she packages all of this as an experience that she's going through, she's on this journey and she is not done with it. And I think that's true of all of this album. I think Lorde writing these songs is in the middle of self-discovery, and she hasn't quite made it to the end, and she doesn't know if she's going to. And I think that's part of the beauty and the chaos of this album. And I think that's like really well exemplified on Man of the Year. Moving on to Favorite Daughter. Favorite Daughter is a gag for me. Favorite Daughter, Man of the Year, and David all kind of build on the same thematic elements of Lorde making a figure in her life, quote unquote God. She's looking to this figure to be led. She's breaking her back to impress this person. And from what I can tell, this song is about her father until it turns into her singing to her fans, saying she's singing all these songs to her dad, but she's doing this so that you can feel like a favorite daughter. That's my interpretation of it. Once again, I've only sat with this album for a couple days, so I'm not a literature major, but for people who are people pleasers, this song really hits. Breaking my back just to be as brave as my mother. The woman was too stunned to speak. A lot of this album is exploring who Lorde is without her God after a loss of faith. In a figure of speech, she's lost her religion, and she's trying to figure out like who she is without that. And I think that's really well emphasized on Favorite Daughter. And I think the chorus change at the very end of the song where she says, I am a good actress and I'm doing all this so that you can pretend to be a favorite daughter. I love that. I think it's beautiful. It's a beautiful way to spin it. Now, this is gonna be my controversial opinion. Current Affairs, well produced. I like how it sounds, but I don't love the song. And there's a couple reasons for that. I think mostly it's hard to see past that she's singing about the Pamela Anderson sex tape, and I just don't understand what she sees in this and like why it's so impactful to her. I think also the sample of the song doesn't really fit for me personally. I think it all sounds nice together, but it's not a song I find myself, just based off first impressions, like coming back to a ton. Once again on this song, Lorde is referring to her lover as a sort of religion and what it means to lose that. But yeah, I think it builds upon that theme of this relationship being her religion, this man being her God. Moving on to Clear Blue. Clear Blue is a beautifully written song, and I love the melody. I just wish there was like some sort of instrumentation. I think Clear Blue in general, you know, obviously I have never personally taken a pregnancy test, but describing taking a pregnancy test as never feeling more alive, I think is a really beautiful way to put it. To really feel truly alive, you do have to have some sort of risk, and I think those are the most thrilling yet scary moments. I just wish there was more instrumentation. It's such a beautiful song. It is written so well, and it sounds so good. It just feels bare to me. I don't know what circumstance I would be listening to Clear Blue. I have not taken a pregnancy test. I don't know what that feeling is like. I can relate to risky behaviors having consequences, if you catch my drift, and taking a test to see if those consequences have hit you. However, for me, I wish this song had a little bit more melody, if that makes sense. Moving on to GRWM. We're back.
Wide hips, 210, 96, skin scar.
Welcome back, Sophie. Welcome back, Pots and Pans music. I love this song. I think this is like her most innovative production on a song yet, and I love it so much. It is so good. I think the juxtaposition of Clear Blue to Grown Woman is like, it's like getting shot. It's literally like getting shot. It's so good, and it hits so hard. This is kind of like a really devastating song when you really listen to it. In my opinion, it is talking about after this breakup that she's had with this man in her life who she looked to as God, and she's been trying to please and didn't really know who she was outside of that. Now she's trying to figure that out, and she feels like she never grew up. It's this she had a very stunted childhood. If you're familiar with her story, she like literally blew up when she was 13. If anybody's allowed to talk about stunted youth, it's her. And I think it's just this really devastating song about like not feeling like you really grew up at all, and you've always just been listening to other people. Following that, we have Broken Glass, which is one of, if not my favorite off the album. Broken Glass is this really thoughtful deconstruction of her eating disorder and what it did to her and all the things she had to give up. And I just think it's one of the most like thoughtfully written songs I have heard in a long time. It's talking about like her body image and why she's doing this to please other people. It has this really dancey synth behind it as well. So it's like, I'm so depressed. And you know what? Sad girl shaking ass is kind of the vibe of the summer when you really think about it. Like, we are sad, but we should shake ass. Lorde has been talking a lot about her eating disorder recently and about how it's affected her and how she wishes somebody else would have made a song like Broken Glass. And I can see why. Broken Glass, I think, is it's a very honest and raw song. And I think throughout this album, you really get such a better picture of who Lorde is as a person. In a lot of her past albums, we have who is Lorde as a lover, who is Lorde as a writer, as a pop star, but we haven't really gotten to know her outside of a muse until this album. And I feel like that's just such a treat. And I think it's really good songwriting. The next song is If She Could See Me Now, and I'm still kind of digesting this one, but from what I can get, it's talking about how all of these painful, horrific experiences that she's talking about have made her stronger. And if the past version of her could see herself, what would she say? What would she say? She's figured out who she is, and she's been working through her eating disorders, and if a past version of her could see her, she would be proud. And I think that's a really beautiful message to leave on this album. That kind of self-discovery leads right into the last track of the album, David. David is probably her best album closer, I think, and this is where she really ties all of it together in a bow and leaves on a question. And the line, "I made you God because it was all I knew how to do," gave me full body chills. I think David is probably the best written song on the album, and I'm taking some more time to digest it, and the production on this and the way that it builds, and she's finally come to the conclusion that she doesn't belong to anybody. And I think after literally calling this man her God to being able to come to a place saying, no, I don't belong to anybody, and wondering if she's ever going to love again. I think once you've actually progressed, you've worked through all of the things and you've found out who you are, you do ask that question, like, but am I ever going to be in love again? Like, I might like who I am and have worked through all of this, but like, is love still going to find me? And I think that's just a powerful way to end it. But anyways, Virgin for me gets a 9 out of 10. I think it's her best album to date. Obviously, there's a little recency bias in it, but it's so honest and raw, and it's just a really, really beautiful album. And if you have some time, I think you should check it out. But that's all I got for you today. If you like this video, please give it a like and consider subscribing. Once again, I make movies and music. You should check out my films and my music videos. You might like them. I'm going to be dropping a trailer for my next short film, The Boy Who Fell from Heaven, next week. So until then, bye.
Tayo, Charlie at CX here. Due to a packaging error, we can't sell 3,000 Le Creuset cookware sets, so I'm giving them away to my royal fans for free. If you're seeing this ad, you can get a free Le Creuset cookware set today. But just a heads up, there are a few rules. You must live in the United States, and you can only get one free kitchen set per household.